All right. Let me stop the music. So we're here today to talk about information sharing. Just about every single day, it seems like across the news, you hear about somebody getting hacked and some sort of leak going on. It was reported not too long ago that potentially every single American Social Security number is out there on the dark web and people have access to it. I reported also that Toyota seems like they were involved in a data breach. And so this isn't just affecting individuals, it's affecting large enterprises. And as we move forward in this digital age where everything potentially could be tokenized, secure information sharing is going to be paramount to this. So today I have the pleasure of speaking with 𝗙𝗏𝗀𝗀. He was a former Oracle architect, and he has some pretty valuable insights into this topic. And not only does he provide insights into this topic, he's actually involved in this space, and he's developing things that are focused and centered around secure information sharing. So tell us, for those who haven't been following me along with, because I've had you on this discussion several times. Apologize for the dog. Just briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah. So hey everyone. Yes, I'm 𝗙𝗏𝗀𝗀. I help. I've worked within IT roughly about 9 years. 6 of the last were kind of in the enterprise, kind of an institutional space of IT and digital transformation, and particularly within cloud infrastructure and security within Oracle. I've recently kind of left that endeavor. A lot of my latest work there was kind of revolved around edge AI, and kind of how we sort of rethink these data pipelines. And then since then, and kind of in the background, I founded a company called 𝗂𝗵𝗽𝘀𝗀. And additionally, I built Fort Worth DAO. And within 𝗂𝗵𝗽𝗀, we have an advisory and consulting division, in which that's who we're mapped with the National DigiFoundry. And then within the National DigiFoundry, this is how we work with Benjamin Diggles. I'm on the co-chair of the Secure Information Sharing Committee, and we're working on defining some level of national standards and playbook and sort of guiding principles that organizations can take to have a framework of secure information sharing, and also in kind of a Web3 sort of world. A lot of it is around kind of just educating on what is Web 2 and this how it kind of translates into this decentralized node and this hyper connectivity sort of environment. And 𝗂𝗵𝗽𝗀𝗀 specifically gave birth several years back in my mind, and it was a product I kind of mainly built for myself. But in general, it's a niche of cyber and financial security. So a lot of it is open source intelligence based mining, and then aggregated resources, and then a newsletter around the same. So what that means is we want to be a driving force and mission oriented about evangelizing the population to be more financial security aware. So that means how government finance work. You can monitor how insider trading is happening within Congress. You can monitor like government contracts getting issued. And then, as you can see on the screen here, this specific section is more about resources on open source intelligence. So kind of having your average citizen know how to do internet research and internet intelligence work for either cyber security based purposes. And even on the other hand, it is also a part of investment due diligence. There's a big part of open source intelligence most people don't know about, but like, for example, one of the early signals on Solana was that if you observe the followers that were growing on Solana in the beginning days, you could see there's these large institutional trade desk analysts starting to follow them. So that's kind of like an example of when you start digging into an entity, you start getting sort of these derivative signals that might be indicating a larger movement that's not sort of explicitly public or announced. So that's one example. And then, obviously due diligence for traditional stock companies, analyzing a board, their social networks, and these type of things are kind of the elements you can have. And then also it's a defense mechanism where you can also show people how they need to protect their internet and digital footprint as well. But in specifically in secure information sharing, the part where, with the National DigiFoundry having these guiding documents, and then even with 𝗖𝗵, is like we're just trying to build this consciousness of, just be mindful how you own your data, how you transmit your data. And there's always trade-offs of, you just need to be able to sort of classify things into the sort of crown jewels and then kind of outer orbits that, may be less sensitive. But at a high level, that's what it is. And we can kind of dig into more specifics or use case oriented type of things at an enterprise or even at a community type of level. I try to think of things as a systems thinking model, so it kind of goes inward and outward of, it applies to all entities, and just in a general principle, but in a large sense it varies. So
Yeah, and this is a big deal, and it's costing companies hundreds of millions of dollars potentially. And people are getting sued, actually. I think Texas sued Meta for information sharing. Meta settled for something, some historic number. I think it was like $1.4 billion. So, companies are starting to get serious about securing their data. And it kind of goes along with the article you had here about this potential. Why don't you walk us through about what you were trying to get across here in your vision of this information age?
Yeah. So I want to try to have this as grounded as possible. A lot of this is pretty heady type of conceptually. There's a lot of overwhelming information flow. There's cyber fatigue in terms of all these breaches. Like we all the social security numbers got hacked. You hear every other day some county. There's so many that it becomes to us like fatigue. It's like voter fatigue. It's like vote. Just nobody cares. But the main premise I'm trying to show here, and this has kind of been the main research element I've kind of focused on as an analyst myself within kind of the work 𝗖𝗵 does, is that we pay a lot of attention to government, finance, and geopolitics and cyber. So within that specific paper, I call it the great capitulation. But essentially, it's sort of an awakening that is kind of already sort of arised a lot in the national security space and certain hyper security conscious investment circles. But it's kind of, we take the lessons of history and we understand that usually the state and the government always shoots itself in the foot and either falls into an hyperinflation scenario or has some level of political destabilization that has to ultimately be recalibrated or redesigned to foster the next age of stability. We can kind of go in the sections here one by one, but the high level idea is that there's a larger issue that, especially since COVID, the amount of money printing and government debt that has accrued since 2020 is becoming a larger national security risk for the common people of the United States. Even the decades before, the cost of capital for the corporations was next to 0 to 1%. So they could, obtain debt very simply, and the corporate debt bubble is its own sort of monstrosity. But when you add all this together, the underpinnings of these markets, these capital markets, is sovereign debt. the liability, these kind of paper, all this kind of paperwork ultimately is this paper-based security, is ultimately at a sovereign debt level. The U.S. Treasury bailed out the big banks in 2008. So each business cycle over the past 10 years has been the debt problem getting swallowed by a larger entity. So ultimately, it's at the state now, and a sovereign debt issue. So what we're talking about here is this concept of a cyber estate, and this growing idea that within a cyber estate, the anchoring assets are going to be, cryptographic based assets and secure assets that you can enforce its security through cryptographic means. And with that said, you kind of can trim a lot of the fat on how you're managing and administrating all these complex securities and arrangements, and it very just boils down to its cryptographic and asset tokenization layer, and it'll favor organizations that go more into the realm of using a digital governance and infrastructure than just sort of your traditional court system. And this is what I've told my grandmother. I've told a lot of kind of older people to really think about this. Is if Fidelity goes down, Bank of America goes down, AT&T goes down, whatever it is, this isn't something you go to your courthouse to fix, right? Like if you can't log into your Fidelity, you can't log into AT&T. Whether you go to the courthouse, you're not going to solve that problem. It's a cyber issue, and that attack surface is the internet and the whole world. And mainly what we're talking about here is there's this large amount of markets and wealth that has to channel into these digital rails and this Web3 rails. And on the longer end, this is why you would see things like stable coins, USDC, a lot of this plumbing into digital assets being the ultimate means of what, this age's economy. And I think we already see that, like you're highlighting here, data as a currency. Really data as a currency is what gives Google and Meta, Facebook, their power, right? Like their ad tech and their ability to serve you ads or kind of shepherd your consumer decisions or behavior, like is their primary IP. So that's kind of what's going to proliferate, and you can see this niche down even into a lot more sectors.
Yeah. And, it's like I've highlighted this little factoid that not a lot of people are aware of, and different types of data have different values, like medical data. Medical data is, like 10 times more valuable than financial data. And speaking of Google, I mean, it's one of the reasons why Google and Amazon have gone basically all in on the healthcare sector. Amazon even has an app where you can get medical stuff. You can see a clinic online. They can prescribe you medicines and stuff. I mean, it's big business. And, if that stuff gets breached, they have this whole market, data brokers that buy up all this data. There's all these companies that want your data. Different pharmaceutical companies, different vendors. I mean, there's a whole market here. And all of this is completely exposed by the weak systems that we have now. I mean, you're seeing all the vulnerabilities. Like you mentioned, there's local governments, there's cities that are getting hacked left and right with these ransomware stuff. So, it's important, I think, as we transition to even more things becoming digitized, that we have a secure way to handle all of this stuff.
Yeah, no, and it's particularly with health data. One a big threat vector that happens to a lot of families with disabled people, members, and trying to rely on insurance, is that you're supposed to disclose all this health information to your insurance provider or that financial institution providing insurance. And more likely than not, the IT supporting that financial organization is not as robust as you'd imagine. And just as you pointed out here, that discloses a lot of information that, one, is obviously not compliant and illegal, but two, once it's out there, the monetary value on it is substantial. It's one of the most valuable data sets that threat actors on the dark web purchase, because it has actionable means for further cybercrime.
And so, 𝗂𝘵𝗵, let's get back to 𝗂𝘵𝘵 a little bit. So part of this stuff is to educate people. And so, maybe can you walk us through how somebody could find out that, for instance, the government is potentially looking at all of this stuff?
Yeah, if you let me share my screen, I can kind of walk through kind of the main way I would use it, in the sense of
Okay.
if you're trying to, yeah. So I'll kind of talk through how I would recommend using it and how I do.
Yeah,
And
because
then
getting information while you set up your screen share,
oh, yeah.
I'm gonna sort of walk us through my little headaches of finding stuff. So the other day, I pointed out this article about the Pentagon, right? So there was this article about how they're going to be implementing this cybersecurity initiative, and I was trying to weave through. How Constellation's Iron Spider, potentially applies here. And none of that stuff is on this website, but what you have to do is you have to go down lots of different rabbit holes to find the particular information that you're looking for. And the only reason why I know is because I wouldn't necessarily say I'm an expert in the topic, but I've been involved in this stuff long enough that I know how to go down the rabbit hole. So I clicked this link here, which led me to this website that talks about some of this. And then it went further down to a different website that's part of the Undersecretary of Defense's website. So there's multiple different layers to find the particular information that you're wanting to look at. So let me add your thing to the stage. Okay, so there you go.
Yeah, I know you're certainly a pro on kind of investigating into the weeds a lot of this. So I appreciate you kind of giving me some spotlight here. But yeah, so first things first, we dish out reports like these to our users every Monday through Friday. I mean, we do need to. There's a lot more content and things we could cover and more sections we could have. I really do need to have a lot more dedicated blockchain-based sections. But at a high level, we kind of aggregate government contracts that were issued. We look at the big ones. We look at some larger insider trades. These obviously aren't incredibly huge, but that's kind of what we detected just on the daily job. And then we're looking at sentiment shifts, and then the newest CVEs, and then we sort of align kind of 5 of the latest news that comes from our open source RSS feed at si.𝗂𝘵𝗵.com that we just let people integrate with whatever they want. But yeah, so we dish these out for users every Monday and Friday. And the main thing is to just, keep you aware on government contracts issued, some insider trading that's happening, that's being disclosed, and then, CVEs that you may want to sort of be cognizant of, as well as kind of sentiment shifts. So, hey, why are these stocks getting a lot more of attention, at least from sentiment, and then news? So this report itself, these could just be lines of inquiry or lines of like poking into. So when we talk about SGC, their CEO bought 10,000 shares, and this larger ownership. Obviously, this, it could mean something or it could not mean anything. but it's for example, it's this company AGM, AGM and SGC. So I don't even know exactly what those are, but we can see here is like, okay, do they get awarded government contracts? And that didn't populate right, but it looks like it's detecting something. Oh, it's right here. What was the other one? SGC, SGC. And this page is a bit slow because it doesn't have pagination fully enabled.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to give people a little tip here. Now, definitely this is not financial advice, but you could absolutely find little gems. Like what he's doing here, this is exactly, before I got into crypto, this is exactly what I did with a lot of the energy stocks. So this is how I found this company, for example, 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗁, because energy storage is going to be huge. I mean, it's I can't I can't really get out there enough to tell people just how big this is going to be. Especially now with AI, these systems are so power hungry. And Tesla isn't the only person in the game that makes batteries, for example. So this led me down a rabbit hole, and I found this company called 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀. And what piqued my interest about 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀 is two of the biggest investors in this company are Microsoft and Volkswagen. And Volkswagen, for those who don't know, is the world's largest automaker. So these little insights here on like who's buying and how much they're buying could be key indicators to just at least get you to pay attention to something that's going on, or maybe nothing.
Yeah. So I mean, these are kind of just little signals to kind of poke into. And then here we include the meta links, where like at least this specific purchase will take you to like the Edgar database, and then you can kind of see a little bit more kind of the open source disclosure of it. And then this gentleman here, you could get an idea of what is the larger tertiary activity around this business. And it looks like they're doing more fabrication and manufacturing. So, and again, in manufacturing, I think, nuclear stocks this week kind of took a big pump, but that kind of leads you down a certain kind of rabbit hole of it. But, another way is, so these are kind of the latest government contracts you see it issued. A lot of them are just pretty standard run of the mill business, but usually you kind of want to see the larger ones, or certain patterns of them. A lot of the government vendors are usually kind of the same day in, day out, or large, but, um, and this is kind of me thinking on the fly, but I'm thinking of like nuclear. If I type in like nuclear, if it even pops
Oh
up.
yeah, that's another area that I've been hammering for like years before. Now people are talking about it because Sam Altman is an investor in one of these companies that I was talking about, these small modular reactors. This is going to be a big thing. This energy sharing, and that's what these small modular reactors are going to allow people to do, is kind of make their own microgrids, for example.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one that I'm just doing this on the fly, but this is a ticker called T-Tech, and they got a government contract for oversight of the United Nuclear Corporation and GE work at Northeast Church Rock site. And this was what? I mean, it's almost what? A little less than a month ago. But I mean, we could see if there's any kind of like disclosure on this specific stock. We're not getting immediate hits. And another thing is because there's so much data that actually having enough loaded it's not always cached in Italy the front end. But again, so that would tell me, okay, T-Tech, like I've never even heard of that. So, you know, that, you could look in here. Tetra Tech. It's a Pasadena, California-based company. It's a pretty pricey stock. And let's see how long they've existed. So they're a pretty old company, and they're up pretty huge. So, so again, this is kind of a line of inquiry, right? And this is just a certain level of like, okay, you're starting to like shape a level of analysis when it comes around government business or kind of the market structure. And
What
then,
about I know one. Here's another one. It's not energy, but they recently did get a government contract. It's a company called AST Space Mobile, and the reason that piqued my interest with them was I knew that there had to be somebody making an alternative, a competitor to Elon Musk's SpaceX, not SpaceX, but Starlink. Because again, this whole communication industry is huge, and there's so many people that don't have access to basic internet services, and that's what got me down the rabbit hole with this company called AST Space Mobile, and they have a government contract.
yeah, I think I saw a post. Yeah, and they're actually out of Texas too. I think they have a big facility.
Yeah,
I think
they
they just,
make a lot of satellites in Texas.
yeah. Um, yeah, the problem here is I'm not even saving this in browser properly because it's so much data. Yeah, but the thing with AST, and I didn't get any hits. I'm gonna break that because it didn't load. But anyways, refresh this. Yeah, a lot of my as you can see, a lot of my market-based loading isn't optimal. The powers of solo deving is kind of this is what you get. But one area I kind of want to show people is the like how you would do your own internet investigations specifically. So let this load. Oh, looks like we're okay. That's just the sort of stock overview stuff. But at a high level, there's certain kind of focus areas. You usually do your OSINT investigations. You might be analyzing the domain. You might be doing the emails. You might want to be looking at like general collection. You might want to do business searches. You might just want to kind of learn the cycle or like publishing. Um, but again, so like the tools here is like kind of helping you link like, okay, what if you have to dig into one area of an entity online, like there's a lot of ways to look at it. There's a lot of the general cyber way, and like for that company ASTS, for example, there's certain things you could think about that with, right? And obviously social media is the big one. I actually have more resources I have to publish here um, that I'm iterating on, but uh, once you kind of know what you're digging into, then you can start kind of digging into, um, everything around it. So like we have some meta links here on like other great open source intelligence resources that, might be useful for you. Again, it's a large library, but the idea is like, okay, if you want to search for these companies like ASTS, um, you can kind of get an idea of, you get their legal records. So, this is kind of how you would dig into it. And then you could even see, obviously, it looks like this acronym's pretty big, but so what is it? AST Space Mobile. And they might have another like actual legal name, but what we can type that into there and see what happens. And then you can kind of dig into a lot more of the ownership. So as you see here, they have like 5 nested like corporate entities, pretty standard. And then yeah, each which way you could kind of dig into it. So like even like kind of their overseas operations, if it's that clear, you can sort of get a little bit of idea here. And even if you wanted to sort of view the officers that are registered, those specific individuals could give you a lot more on maybe their matrixed influence into other elements of industry or market. So again, a lot of this is just teaching you how to properly poke on the internet. And then we have kind of aggregated news here. Again, this is all just sort of we just have a bunch of RSS feeds and we're data mining it all. And then you can go in here and kind of click into it. Another one that I find interesting that I don't think people really pay attention to is like the treasury issuance. So like this one is and this link didn't work, but it looks like we had a hit on a 16-day bill.
And this is all on 𝗵𝘵𝗻, correct?
Yeah. So this is all just mapped here. And for some reason these aren't loading properly. But yeah, we're mining like the yeah, so they just announced a 16-day treasury bill, which I don't know, has anyone ever heard of a 16-day treasury bill? Because like this isn't like you really have to think about this. Like, okay, they're doing a $35 trillion treasury bill for 16 days. Like, so this tells you there is like financing issues, right? Like so
Yeah, I
it's
don't
kind of
think,
these.
and this was just released because I haven't heard this news. This is brand new.
Yeah, so this isn't like commonly public news. They're not going on Bloomberg and going on Wall Street Journal and like, hey, the U.S. Treasury just did a treasury bill for 2 weeks for 35 trillion, or billion. This is billion, sorry. Yeah, so it's these kind of things we really want people to become a little bit more cognizant of, so they understand. Okay, when you start getting this world of digital assets, like this is why we do it, right? Because if you're going to try to make sense of all these like stock markets, equities, they're all predicated on these like underpinning debt markets. These M1, M2 markets that ultimately derive from like government money printing, and like finance ministries around the world. So it's kind of these kind of things to just be more conceptualized, and you actually realize how common it is. So like I think 16-day actually might be the shortest one, but I mean they have all sorts of them. And that's just like a financial one. But then also, and then we also have kind of Web3 based news. Hacker locked someone out of their Google account. And then, we have an aggregated list of these, and they're and if you want to directly integrate it, we actually offer that for free at this site. So it's actually just sourced here. So we're just data mining it and then aggregating it all here, and then we're just serving it. So you can wire in directly here if you need to. But yeah, so at a high level, this is mainly it, in just kind of building this consciousness of, okay, this is why you have to have a digital asset and a cyber first perspective, especially as we kind of understand the fabric of markets in this day and age in humanity. And then, yeah, and we have sort of a link to our Discord and our Telegrams here. And yeah, so I mean, the main thing is just kind of getting people these newsletters, and then if they need to dig in, they can have a bit more simple tooling on it. And this is kind of just kind of the indie hacking app that I've developed from it. So
Yeah, that's That's pretty wild. And what? So $35 billion was just.
Yeah, yeah, I can load that
And
back up. So this is it,
yeah,
and this was
that.
today. This
This
is
was
today.
today.
Yeah,
that's nuts.
yeah, and really like a lot of the entities that their hands are forced to buy these are like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Citibank. That's kind of their main jobs. And and uh and yeah, and that's kind of really it. And it should wake people up to like, hey, this is the stability of the dollar. Like you might have spent $5 on coffee, you got to pay your taxes, whatever, but they just printed 35, because creating debt is creating money. So they just, created 35 billion today, or the auction's tomorrow. It looks like the original issue was, yeah. So, I mean, issue August 27th. It's only till September 12th. And yeah, so there's this kind of like, they make some sort of yield on it, like a small amount of yield. And, that's kind of in a very large institutional sense of billions of dollars, it makes a lot of sense. But I don't know, it's just kind of mind boggling. Like when you really kind of just step back and you think about it, like how the government finances itself. Because that's a highly underrated discussion. And even with politics, like you'll see the DNC or the RNC, they don't exactly dig into the like guts of, what's really funding arguably the whole world. The US, our job is exporting capital, and this is kind of one of our main strengths is like this. But that at some point this doesn't, we can't bend the laws of physics and gravity to ad infinitum to make sense. And not only that, it can corrode a lot of other elements of our, like we've
But
seen over the past
I guess
40
this
years.
gets into the questions about information sharing and transparency. Like I'd imagine that there's a lot of people in the government, whether it be local, state, or on a federal level, that don't want this level of transparency, right? There's a reason why, for example, the Pentagon has never passed an audit.
Yeah, yeah, and we're not even digging into the Pentagon. This is just the Treasury Department. So we're just showing how it kind of seeps over.
Yeah,
But
but this is wild. I mean, this was breaking news actually. That this happened today, right now, and we discovered this by using your platform.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, this is the kind of stuff we pay attention to. And this, like if we kind of take a step back and we kind of think about what this means for the layman. This is why we pay very close attention to Web3 projects. This is why Bitcoin is a very very deep subject matter, and blockchain is a very deep subject matter. This is why metagraphing and immutable audit trails is a huge deal. So you can't just have banks cover up, just not have any audit trail basically. Um, and that kind of gives me the idea is like maybe they should metagraph all these treasury issuances. But um,
Uh,
but yeah, so that's what it is. And that's why it's this is why we focus so hard on paying attention to things like DAG. We pay attention to how you do decentralized applications. This is why Bitcoin as a means of digital gold and its ability to transfer billions of dollars across a border just memorizing 12 words is really profound. Because I'm sure a lot of people, once you start doing larger transactions, even on like a consumer sense, it's not easy working with the bank. and even getting your money out. Like it's really just, exchanging packets and, light, but, has all these clearing and approval processes that are there by design to, um, really just control your money. And as you can see in kind of the paper we wrote, and this isn't just me making this up, but money is ultimately data. Money is just in a database, right? So
Yeah, I mean it's all just data. Now let's share this. Why don't we dive into Fort Worth a little bit, and how that ties in to a lot of the
yeah,
things that
yeah,
you're
sure.
doing.
Yeah, so 𝗂𝗵 is a for-profit endeavor. It's a SaaS. We're trying to uh, uh, just kind of build that mission of building a cyber and financially secure population, just for profit. Fort Worth DAO is a nonprofit city DAO, and um, we hold workshops in showing people the history of blockchain industry 4.0 and how we, again, it's kind of the same mission. It just we do it for free and we'll come to you, but explicitly on Web3 and North Texas. Um, so we have like aggregated resources. So at the top, we kind of give resources on like OPSEC, kind of Web3 developer tracks and the headers. It's basically just some GitHub repos we forked, but we're trying to incubate a lot of this thought leadership as well as actually doing the groundwork of teaching people. I think it's less than 2% of the population owns Bitcoin. You could even think of the subset that even have any idea what a DAO is. Like we have shirts now, and I'll wear them, and people will be like, "What is that?" And then it's like, "Oh, I can talk to you about what a digital organization and how you would govern tokenized assets and things like that."
Yeah, and this
Um,
is this is actually how I found you. I was trolling around on LinkedIn, and I noticed that I believe it was you, made a comment on Constellation's LinkedIn page talking about how you guys were interested in implementing this technology, and that sort of blew my mind because I was aware of lots of different plays, like Hawaii is actually, like, the state of Hawaii is looking at integrating this stuff, but the more and more people that integrate this technology, the more people become digitally aware of things that are happening.
yeah, I can send you a white paper. I'm kind of get a lot more vetted and kind of rigorous, kind of like academic review or peer review. But I'll DM it to you on Twitter. Um, but the main thing of a city DAO is like we're chain agnostic, so we're not playing favorites, but we do understand the value of certain use cases. So like what the reason that like I knew Constellation had value was because if you need to create like a direct acrylic graph and you need to custody that data pipeline, for X, Y, whatever, metadata that needs to be shared. Um, that's how, the scalable solutions on that is non-trivial. And that's how I knew, there's a lot of, you could go into specific like municipal or community use cases and think about how that would translate. Now, a lot of the dev cycle there is now like this is where I work more with court and kind of the existing community, and we try to figure out how to scale that because uh running these Scala environments are not exactly easy, and then also the like you need at least 3 nodes, so it's kind of like it's not the cheapest thing to run a full Euclid cluster. So again, I'm like building my muscles on like, okay, how do we actually implement these metagraphs? um, and that's with court, that's kind of what we're focused on with the hackathon, is kind of like sharing knowledge on how we could bring something to life that scales. So like public facing things and community valuable things like news, um, and things like that, or more like civilian level interests that should be disclosed or be able to be like uh, poked into or like interrogated into by the public. So um so yeah, we're chain agnostic. I sent you a link. I mean, the Iron Spider playbook is a lot that, like, it's like, hey, how does this, we want to know, like, we kind of look at what's going on here. A lot of this is kind of mission planning, at the like Air Force level, but we need to really think about it from a state or city government point of view, um than just explicitly kind of, DoD. So that's kind of
Yeah, and
that's
this stuff can be scaled out into other use cases, and it can be multi-chain. And I think that's what they were trying to get at with this Iron Spider thing. I mean, you've got multiple participants here. Like 𝗵𝗵𝗽 chain is a blockchain, and so is Constellation. But you're using the strengths of two different systems all in your environment. So the city DAO doesn't have, it can be chain agnostic and potentially integrate a metagraph as a solution while also bringing and bridging other chains into the layer, into the stack, if you will.
Yeah, and the recent kind of demo about metagraphing, basically replicating into an EVM, which is Simba. That's big,
Mhm.
right? That interoperability is incredibly key, and I even know, I mean, that was one of a core requirement, with the DoD, right? Because they might need to move it or transform it, or there's a lot of various open-ended things that data may need to go into. So yeah.
So so people can find you on 𝗂𝘵𝗱, and does it's free, right?
Yeah, there's a free tier, there's a paid tier. It's kind of like more of a, we can do more of a, it's kind of sort of consulting kind of in this world of it. It's kind of niche, like information he may be more valuable to one organization than to another. But yeah, at a high level, if you sign up for the free, you'll get those newsletters. Right now, we just give it all out for free. You can access this for free. Or if this kind of work would be relevant for what you do, just hit us up. And yeah, so make an account, and check us out. And if you can find me on Twitter pretty easily. And if you want to talk more, or if you want to help contribute, or if you have ideas to make it better, we're definitely all help. At some level, it needs to scale beyond just kind of me and my own hands. Um, so yeah.
And for those in Texas, how often do you guys do meetups? Quite often. I know Texas is quickly becoming like the blockchain hub of the United States. I mean, it seems like they're really taking the lead. You know, tons of stuff is happening in Texas.
Yeah, it's like a monster. Like we Ted Cruz last weekend endorsed, or the Texas Blockchain Council had a strong endorsement for Ted Cruz, as he's becoming a stronger Bitcoin and blockchain ally. He visited a big mine of Core Scientifics in Denton, Texas, which is North Texas. But yeah, this strategic Bitcoin reserve, a lot of that force around that is, Texas helping push the charge, as well as Wyoming. And then now there's kind of this growing, they're very aware that the, kind of the Web3 caucus or the Bitcoin caucus is a very significant force. So they need politicians have to make allies with. And this
And
is just a recent development.
you're involved with this, right? Sorry to cut you off there, but you're
Yeah.
involved with the Texas Blockchain Council, correct?
Yeah. So, Lee Bratcher, he runs the Texas Blockchain Council. Great guy. And that's what it is ensuring sort of policy incubation, and ensuring Texas has the right market and policy framework to keep us a global leader. And yeah, they have several committees. I highly recommend getting involved. There's a North American Blockchain Summit at SMU. I'd make sure to be there. There's enterprise tracks. There's kind of this city DAO track that may or may not kind of we'll see how that's properly structured with the public sector. But there's enterprise tracks. There's energy tracks. And there'll be a host of speakers. Last year there was RFK, Vivek, 4 U.S. senators, and huge industry presence. And it was in Fort Worth actually last year, so that was pretty cool. So yeah, make sure to check this out, join, get involved, and definitely pay attention to a lot of the work coming out of here, because it's incredibly strategic, and really this is laying the foundations on again, it kind of fletches all into this cyber estate concept that we're talking about in some of these larger strategic issues for the United States and nationally.
Yeah, it's going to be a big deal. I had the pleasure of meeting a lot of these people in Nashville, and yeah, Texas is lots of exciting things are happening in Texas.
Yeah. The Texas Blockchain Council, there's several good committees that if you get involved in at the right level, you can help contribute. Yeah, check it out.
All right. Well, thanks for your time. This is going to be recorded. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to just drop a comment in here, and we'll be keeping an eye on everything, and look forward to your progress and seeing actually what you're building. We didn't really talk about that too much, I guess. The Metagraph, the hackathon deal that you're doing, but it'll be exciting to see how that develops. So, all right, take it easy, everybody.
All right, bye,
Thanks
everyone.
for watching.
Yeah, thanks, Dagan.